The Taking. The morning Europa's crimson sunrise painted the ice plains beyond the research dome. Dr. Elena Vasquez never imagined it would be the last peaceful moment she'd witnessed for weeks. The xenobiologist was documenting microbial life forms in the station's laboratory when the first explosion shattered the silence. Sarah Chen looked up from her holographic display, where she'd been analyzing mineral samples. At 16, she was the youngest member of the Europa Research Station, having earned her place through exceptional grades in xenogeology and a recommendation from the Mars Colonial Academy. More importantly, she carried the disciplined bearing of someone raised by Master Chief Marcus Chen of the Navy SEALs. "That didn't sound like a mining charge," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the tremor that ran through the station's superstructure. Dr. Vasquez moved to the observation window, her breath fogging the reinforced glass as she peered into Europa's perpetual twilight. What she saw made her blood freeze. 7 massive vessels, sleek and predatory, descended through the thin atmosphere like metallic vultures. Their hulls gleamed with an oily iridescence that seemed to shift and writhe in the pale light. "Those aren't human ships," she whispered. Sarah joined her at the window, and her training kicked in immediately. She'd grown up on military bases, had absorbed tactical thinking like other children absorbed fairy tales. Her father had taught her to assess threats, to remain calm under pressure, to always have an escape route planned. "Vorth Empire," Sarah identified, recognizing the distinctive hull markings from her xenopolitical studies. "They're supposed to be neutral traders." The station's emergency klaxons began wailing, drowning out their conversation. Through the intercom, Station Commander Blake's voice crackled with static and urgency. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have unidentified vessels approaching with hostile intent. This is not a drill." Sarah's hand moved instinctively to the emergency beacon on her belt, a gift from her father before she'd left for Europa. One press would send a priority distress signal directly to Mars Colonial Defense Force. But before she could activate it, the lights went out. Emergency power flickered on moments later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Through the observation windows, they could see alien figures moving across the station's exterior, their environmental suits adapted for Europa's harsh conditions. The Vorth were taller than humans, with elongated limbs and reptilian features visible through the transparent aluminum of their helmets. "They're cutting through the hull," Dr. Vasquez said, pointing to the bright flashes where the aliens worked. "We need to get to the safe room." But it was too late. The laboratory door burst inward with a pneumatic hiss, and 3 Vorth soldiers entered. Their energy weapons hummed with barely contained power, and their large black eyes swept the room with predatory efficiency. The lead soldier spoke in accented but clear English. "Humans will comply. Resistance equals termination." Dr. Vasquez immediately raised her hands in surrender, but Sarah stepped protectively in front of the older woman. The movement was subtle, but the Vorth soldier noticed. His head tilted with what might have been curiosity. "Young human shows protective instincts," he observed to his companions in their clicking, hissing language. Interesting behavioral pattern. They were herded into the station's main corridor, where other captured researchers huddled together. Sarah counted 8 adults, all scientists and support staff. The Vorth moved with military precision, their leader communicating through hand signals that Sarah recognized from her father's training as tactical coordination. Commander Blake lay unconscious near the airlock, a burn mark on his chest where an energy weapon had struck him. He was alive, but barely. The sight filled Sarah with cold fury, an emotion she kept carefully controlled behind a mask of compliance. The Vorth commander, distinguished by additional armor markings, approached the group. His scales were a deep emerald color that seemed to absorb light, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "I am Captain Crickstall of the Vorth Expeditionary Force," he announced. "You have been selected for biological research purposes. Your cooperation will determine your comfort during the process." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her scientific mind overriding her fear. You can't do this. There are interspecies treaties, laws governing first contact situations. Crickstall's laugh was a sound like breaking glass. Treaties? Your species exists at the sufferance of superior civilizations. You have no rights we are bound to recognize. That was when Sarah made her first mistake, at least from the alien's perspective. She moved forward, placing herself between the Vorth commander and Dr. Vasquez. She's right, Sarah said, her voice carrying the steel she'd inherited from her father. The Galactic Council's non-interference directive specifically prohibits the abduction of sentient species for research purposes. You're in violation of about 12 different interspecies laws. The corridor fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. The Vorth soldiers exchanged glances, clearly surprised that a human so young would challenge their commander. Crickstall stared down at Sarah, his black eyes unreadable. "Remarkable," he said finally. "The juvenile shows more knowledge than expected. And courage." His head tilted. "Or perhaps foolishness." "Maybe both," Sarah replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. The aliens loaded their captives onto a transport pod that docked with one of the larger vessels. Sarah memorized every detail she could, noting the ship's layout, the number of crew members, the location of what appeared to be weapon storage. Her father had drilled into her that information was the most valuable weapon in any conflict. The Vorth ship's interior was a mixture of organic curves and metallic surfaces, as if grown rather than built. The air was thick and humid, making breathing difficult for the humans. They were placed in what the aliens called specimen containment, a sterile white chamber with individual cells barely large enough to lie down in. As the ship departed Europa's orbit, Sarah caught a glimpse through a small viewport of the research station, now a burning wreck on the ice plain below. Anger flared in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. Her father had taught her that emotion was useful, but only when controlled and directed. The journey through hyperspace lasted 3 days. During that time, the Vorth conducted what they called preliminary examinations, which mainly involved scanning the humans with various devices and taking biological samples. Sarah endured it all with the stoic patience her father had modeled, but she was always watching, always learning. On the second day, Dr. Vasquez was returned from her examination session with disturbing news. "They're not just studying us," she whispered when the guards weren't listening. "They're trying to understand human psychology, our social structures, our weaknesses." "For what purpose?" asked Dr. Martinez, the station's chief engineer. "I think they're planning something bigger," Sarah said quietly. "This isn't random scientific curiosity. This is intelligence gathering for an invasion." The thought chilled them all, but Sarah felt something else stirring in her chest. Her father had always said that the most dangerous thing an enemy could do was underestimate a human's capacity for protection of their own. The Vorth had taken her from her family, from her world, from everything she cared about. That was their first mistake. On the third day, the ship dropped out of hyperspace near a massive space station that dwarfed anything humans had built. The structure was a twisted maze of organic and mechanical components, with ships of various alien species docked at its numerous ports. This was clearly a major hub of Vorth activity. As they were transferred to the station, Sarah caught sight of something that made her heart leap with hope. In the distance, moving through the asteroid field that surrounded the station, she spotted the distinctive energy signature of human ships. 3 vessels, running dark but visible to her trained eye. Her father had found her. The beacon she'd managed to activate just before the lights went out on Europa had done its job. Master Chief Marcus Chen of the Navy SEALs was coming, and Sarah knew that meant the Vorth had no idea what they'd just brought down on themselves. Captain Crickstall noticed her slight smile as they were led into the station's processing facility. "The young human finds something amusing?" he asked. Sarah looked up at him with the same calm expression her father wore before a mission. "Just thinking about something my dad once told me." "And what was that?" "He said the most dangerous predator isn't the one that roars the loudest. It's the one that hunts in silence." Crickstall's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. Your father sounds like a wise human. Perhaps we will have the opportunity to meet him. Sarah's smile widened just a fraction. I'm counting on it. The Reckoning. Master Chief Marcus Chen floated in the zero-gravity briefing room aboard the UES Retribution, studying the holographic display that showed the Vorth space station in precise detail. His weathered face, marked by years of combat and command, remained impassive as he absorbed the tactical information. But those who knew him well could see the barely controlled fury in his dark eyes. The station has approximately 1,500 inhabitants, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, the mission's intelligence officer. Multiple species, but primarily Vorth military and research personnel. Sarah and the other captives are being held in Section 7, Sublevel 12. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez, commanding the small fleet that had pursued the Vorth across 3 star systems, leaned forward in her chair. Marcus, I need to know you can handle this professionally. I can't have you going in there guns blazing because your daughter is involved. Marcus looked up from the tactical display, his expression calm but his voice carrying an edge that could cut steel. Admiral, with respect, my daughter being involved is exactly why this mission will succeed. The Vorth have made a critical error in judgment. Explain. They think they understand human psychology because they've studied us from a distance. They see us as emotional, impulsive, easily manipulated. Marcus's voice grew quieter, more dangerous. They don't understand that when you threaten a human's family, you don't create chaos. You create focus. The briefing room fell silent. The 12-person rescue team, all elite Navy SEALs and Marine Force recon operators, nodded in understanding. They'd all trained under Marcus Chen, and they knew that focused rage was the most lethal weapon in the human arsenal. The plan is simple, Marcus continued, manipulating the holographic display to show the station's weak points. We exploit their arrogance. They expect us to come in loud and aggressive, so we go in quiet and surgical. Team Alpha takes the weapons array, Team Bravo secures the docking bay, and I extract the captives. Alone? Asked Sergeant Kim, the team's explosives specialist. Alone, Marcus confirmed. Sarah will be expecting me. She's been trained for this scenario since she was 8 years old. Admiral Rodriguez frowned. What scenario? Capture and rescue operations. Every military family has contingency plans. Admiral, Sarah knows exactly what to do when her father comes calling. The insertion went perfectly. The human ships had approached using stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to Vorth sensors. The aliens' detection systems were designed to spot large military vessels, not the small adaptive craft that humans excelled at building. Marcus and his team used modified EVA suits to cross the space between their ship and the station, attaching themselves to the station's hull like metallic parasites. The cutting tools they carried were designed for ship repair, but they worked equally well for creating unauthorized entrances. Inside the station, the team split up according to plan. Marcus moved through the ventilation system with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent decades perfecting the art of silent infiltration. The Vorth had built their station for their own physiology, with corridors and spaces designed for beings taller and more slender than humans. This worked to Marcus's advantage, as he could move through maintenance shafts and service corridors that the aliens would never think to guard. The first sign that something was wrong came when Marcus reached the detention level. The guards outside the holding area were unconscious, not dead, and arranged in positions that suggested they'd simply fallen asleep at their posts. Marcus smiled grimly. Sarah had been busy. He found her in the central holding cell, sitting cross-legged in a meditation pose he taught her when she was 12. The other captives were gathered around her, and she was speaking in low, calm tones about breathing techniques and mental focus. "Hey, kiddo," Marcus said softly as he began working on the cell's locking mechanism. Sarah looked up, and her composed expression cracked just enough to show relief. "You're 3 hours late, Dad." "Traffic was murder," he replied, the old joke between them helping to ease the tension. "You okay?" I'm fine. But Dr. Vasquez has a concussion, and Dr. Martinez needs medical attention for his leg. Marcus nodded, already shifting into extraction mode. Can you move? Sarah stood, and Marcus noticed she was wearing a Vorth Guard's equipment belt. I've been preparing for your arrival. The guards. Pressure point techniques you taught me, combined with some creative application of the sedatives they were using on us for their experiments. Sarah's expression hardened. They made a mistake letting me observe their procedures. Pride swelled in Marcus's chest, but he kept his voice professional. Good work. Now let's get everyone out of here. The extraction should have gone smoothly. The team had planned for various contingencies, and Sarah's preparations had eliminated several potential complications. But as they moved through the station's corridors, they encountered Captain Crickstall and a squad of heavily armed Vorth soldiers. The alien commander looked at Marcus with what might have been respect. So you are the father. The young human spoke of you often during her captivity. Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between the Vorth and the rescued captives. Captain Crickstall, I presume. I've heard about you too. Have you? And what have you heard? That you're intelligent enough to know when you're outmatched. Crickstall's scales shifted color, a sign of amusement in Vorth physiology. You are outnumbered 12-1 human. How am I outmatched? Marcus smiled, and it was the cold expression of a predator who just noticed his prey had wandered into a trap. Because 15 minutes ago, my team disabled your weapon systems, your communication array, and your main power grid. Because there are 3 human warships positioned around this station with enough firepower to turn it into scrap metal. And because you made the mistake of taking my daughter. The lights flickered and died, leaving them in emergency illumination. In the distance, alarms began sounding as the station's automated systems detected multiple critical failures. But mostly, Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly through the corridor. You're outmatched because you underestimated what humans are capable of when we're properly motivated. Crickstall's weapon remained trained on Marcus, but his confidence was clearly shaken. Your species is primitive. You have barely achieved interstellar travel. Sarah stepped up beside her father, her voice calm and steady. That's what everyone keeps saying. But here's the thing about humans, Captain. We don't just adapt to threats. We evolve to meet them. The standoff was broken by Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice over Marcus's comm unit. Chief, we have incoming Vorth reinforcements. 3 heavy cruisers, ETA 10 minutes. Admiral Rodriguez's voice followed immediately. Marcus, we need to expedite extraction. I'm not starting an interstellar war over this, but I'm not leaving our people behind either. Marcus looked at Crickstall, weighing his options. The Vorth commander was clearly doing the same calculation. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said finally. We're leaving with our people. You're going to let us go because starting a war with humanity over a scientific expedition gone wrong isn't in your species' best interests. And if I refuse? Sarah answered before her father could. Then you'll discover that everything you think you know about human capabilities is based on what we've let you see. The real question is whether you want to find out what we've been keeping secret. The silence stretched for long moments, broken only by the sound of the station's emergency systems and the distant rumble of human ships positioning themselves for a potential fight. Finally, Crickstall lowered his weapon. You may go, but this incident will be reported to the Galactic Council. Your species' actions here today will have consequences. Marcus nodded respectfully. I'm counting on it, Captain. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity protects its own. As they boarded their extraction craft, Sarah looked back at the Vorth station through the viewport. Do you think they'll really report this to the Council? Marcus checked his weapon and settled into his seat. I hope so. It's time the rest of the galaxy understood what happens when someone threatens a human family. The flight back to human space was quiet, the rescued researchers finally able to rest after their ordeal. But Sarah remained awake, thinking about the larger implications of what had happened.